Well, here we are back with Heather Eby, and kind of exciting to just discover that God sometimes has plans for our lives that we'd literally blow our socks off, yes?
Yes, yes, that is so true.
Well, when we were talking the other day, I've made some notes on my little tablet here because this is really, really important that we kind of share some interesting stuff here, because you did not feel as a kid that this was something you wanted to do. You were involved in your childhood in Radville in some leadership kinds of things. So maybe take us back to that.
Well, I never really thought of myself as a leader, but in high school, I became the editor of the yearbook. At that point, I probably really wanted to be the president of the SRC.
Right.
But back in the late 70s and early 80s, girls weren't really presidents of anything.
It's true.
You know, they didn't say that you couldn't be it, but it just didn't happen. So I let my friend Eddie become the president of the SRC, and I became the editor of the yearbook, which was great. I loved that as well because it was good for my creative side. Yeah. And my mom always thinks that I was a leader, you know, in Brownies or CGIT. You know, I was always on the executive or something, but you know, that didn't really feel like leadership to me. That was just what I did. So
kind of part of who you were and the fun of being involved.
Well, nobody else wanted to do it. So
there you go.
Yeah, that's part of it too.
Yes. So my understanding is that you came to Moose Jaw as a single mom, starting your life over. Right. And so even that story, as the transition from Radville into Moose Jaw, maybe tell our viewers a little bit, how did that go?
Well, in 1990, I had gone from Radville to Weyburn for a short stint. I worked at CFSL Radio in Weyburn for about a year. And then just so happened a job opening came at CHAB, and again, I didn't feel like I was equipped to work in the big market, but thought I would apply. And lo and behold, I got the job. So my girls and I, they were pretty little. I believe they were 4 and 2. And we moved to Moose Jaw. And we could have been moving to Hong Kong because I did not know anyone. Moose Jaw's not that far from Radville, but back in the day, you know, we didn't do a whole lot of traveling. And so I didn't know anyone. I had a great aunt and uncle here who came to my rescue, and really, I've developed a great relationship with them over the last 25 years or whatever it is. But other than that, I knew nobody. CHAB became my family. And so, worked there and decided to go back to school, better my life so I could do more for my kids, and you know, the rest is sort of history.
Kind of new commitments to community and to
well,
family.
As I told you on the phone, I had two goals when I moved to Moose Jaw, and that was to get back in charge of my checking account and church.
There you go.
Because I had kind of made a mess of both of them.
Okay.
And so it was easier to get in control of my checking account than it was to get in control of my spiritual part of my life. But anyways,
Okay, so you did plug into church.
Eventually I did.
All right.
Eventually I did.
And did you... were you involved in different studies and those kinds of things through those years where you were learning a lot? Was that something that you were doing? Because this is a key part of this story, because it was in 2009 that you began a whole new project, something called the Truth Project, and you were learning all sorts of stuff. And I think that's a key to where you end up here today.
Just before the Truth Project, well, up until a year before that, I'd actually been one of the coordinators of the Alpha program at the Alliance Church. So. And that was a huge commitment. I had done that for years. So when that ended, you know, when God releases you from something, then there was this waiting time. And I knew I was waiting for something. I didn't know, and I hadn't told you that before. I knew I was waiting, and I didn't know what I was waiting for. And then I signed up for the Truth Project at my church in the winter of 2009. And the Truth Project is a series on looking at the Christian worldview of culture, philosophy, health and wellness, and politics, as well as many other things. But it was the politics piece that was the beginning of my city council story. So the night that we were learning about Christian worldview of politics, I think I was in a group of about 12, and the guy was talking, you know, how so many Christians feel like they shouldn't be in politics because politics is bad and it's corrupt and we don't want to be a part of that. And he said, no, like that is not biblical teaching. In the Bible, we are called to be in the world, not of the world, but in the world, and be salt and light, and to bring God's influence into those places. And
kind of the opposite.
Of what we think. But this was biblical. And as he was speaking, I had that lightning bolt feeling into my heart that said, you're going to be on city council in October. And it was the year of an election. And I sort of looked around the room and thought everybody in my group got the same thing. I thought, wow, that's going to be a lot of people on city council, because they all probably heard what I heard. So I hung around after the night was over and talked to our facilitator. Her name is Linda. And I said, so did you get out of that what I got out of that? Like, I think I'm supposed to be on city council. And she's like, no, I didn't get that.
Wow.
And so then I said, well, I think I'm supposed to be. And she said, well, that's good. And, she didn't poo-poo me, but she was very cautious. She said, you need to pray about this, and you need to really be sure and seek the Lord and all that. And it was only in March at that point, so the election wasn't until October. So I had lots of time. Didn't have to worry about it, right?
Okay.
So I followed her advice, and I had 2 of my really good friends, join me in prayer over the course of time.
Okay.
One was Catherine, who I know you have met. And so my friends were, supporting me through prayer through that. And
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And our time is always so short. There's so much to this story. I think she should write a book, perhaps, or something. I don't know. But so there's this interesting shift that's taking place in your daily living with this new awareness that really you might be called to help influence politics in the city for the greater good. I understand by this point in time you're remarried.
Right.
And you have a husband. And what's he thinking about all this?
Well, as I discussed it, generally and not so generally over the course of those months in the summer, he really wasn't that supportive. And he would kind of, yeah, no, you're not doing that. And no. And so that became my my way out. Okay. And because I had, I'd said in my prayers to the Lord, if I'm not supposed to do this, like, you can just shut the door and I'm good. Like,
sure,
I'd be real happy, right? And so in August, I knew, okay, I need to really make this decision now. Right?
The election is in October.
I need to make a plan. And so my husband, Eb, was not appearing to be supportive, so I just said to the Lord, well, that's my clue. Done. Not going to do it. Yeah. Sent off an email to Linda, the original girl, and I said, made my decision, not going to run for city council, so you can put me down as a leader for the Truth Project for September.
Oh, okay. All right.
So she sent me an email back. You can't really hear what people say in emails, but what I heard her say was, really? And just what the content of that email made me have a second thought, and I'm like, you know what, I just better be sure. So long story short, talked to my husband that night, went for a Dairy Queen date, and discussed, what would this really mean, and he hadn't realized I had been serious all those months. I don't know what he was thinking, but anyways.
Right.
So we discussed it that night at length. He did not give me his support that night. He just kind of, hung back a bit. The following morning, I was out in my yard. It was a Thursday because it was my day off, and I remember it very clearly. I was in my yard cleaning some flowers up, and I was telling the Lord all of the reasons why I was not going to be able to do this.
Yep.
And at a very specific moment, I had that strong feeling again, and I don't want people to think I hear voices or whatever, but I felt the Lord say to me, well, then who shall I send?
Wow.
And at that moment in time, in that split second, I knew that I could say no, and that he would choose someone else, and someone else would say yes, and someone else would receive all the blessings that he had in store for me.
Wow.
But that my life would still go on, and I would be fine, and that would all be fine. But I knew that someone else would say yes. So I raised my hand in the air and I said, Lord, choose me.
Wow.
And so I finished my little work in the house, in the yard, and I went back in the house, and this was the day before Message Manager, so my old answering machine was flashing red, and I checked my messages, and it was my husband. And he said, good morning, Madam City Councillor. You have my full support.
Wow.
And so from that moment on, without sounding arrogant, I knew I would be elected.
Wow.
I didn't know up here. I had no, and even the day of the election, I didn't know up here. But deep in my heart, I knew that God had a plan,
right,
and that I was a part of that plan. And to be very honest, Jodi, at this point, I know I go to city council, I do my work, I do all that stuff. I don't know what his plan is.
Sure.
I don't know what he's doing.
Oh, I'm sure it's about having, I think one of your mentors somewhere along the line said, you know, you're going to be fine because you have a moral compass.
Right, Glenn Hagel, right.
I mean, that's a huge compliment, but that's also something that the world doesn't perceive.
Right.
Is happening.
Right.
And it's not it's an incorrect attitude in so many ways, right? But you do have governmental authority in our community. You do have a moral compass. You have like the ability to look at the situation and choose from the perspective of right. And so you are doing exactly what you were called to do, I'm sure, right?
I believe, yes, I am.
You have to.
I am,
You have to.
absolutely.
Come on,
and I mean,
great,
and
right?
there are days that I feel, and I have recorded in my journal, that I've been ineffective or that I could have done better.
Okay.
But I know I'm not perfect, and
Sure.
I mean, God has not called any of us to be perfect.
Right.
He has just called us to you know, follow Him and to be obedient. And for me,
Yeah.
saying yes, not once but twice, to running for City Council is obedience.
That's right.
And we'll see what his plan is. And people say, oh, will you run again? Are you going to be the mayor? Are you going to, you know, I don't know.
Right.
When God tells me I'm done,
Right.
I will be done. Whether Heather Eby is ready to be done or not,
That's right.
when it's time for me to be done, I'll be done. And
Right.
a lot of people, and you know, City Council is political, and a lot of people, especially when I got elected in 2009, thought that I had been, you know, set up to get elected by a special interest group. But and that, you know, always made me chuckle on the inside, because nobody put me up to run for City Council except for the Lord.
Wow.
And you know, when people say, "Oh yeah, I know who's supporting you," I'm like, "Oh, okay, good," you know. But so I've always felt I just felt like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Oh, it's been exciting to hear this story, hasn't it? Thank you for sharing this story. I know life is not always easy in the counselor's chair, but we wish you well. We wish you many blessings, and we wish you just great results for the sake of the good, hey?
Thank you so much.
It's been a good day on the Jodi Faith Show. Thanks for joining us.